Hello, let's make a start. My name is Stephen Tuck and I work in US history here at Oxford, and I'm one of the faculty in Race and Resistance Research programme here. The programme is a community of staff, students and activists engaging with the rise of and resistance to racial hierarchies in Oxford and beyond. So it's my great pleasure today to introduce this important event about the experience of Black students in academic spaces. The event is sponsored jointly by the Race and Resistance Programme and the Black Legacy Project, and it will be a student-led discussion with Ixara Adebayo, Layla March, Andy Burton Marsh, and from Cambridge, Ayamfe Adebayo. The event has been organised by Ixara, who will be chairing the discussion and introduce the panellists. Ixara is a final year historian at Pembroke College, Oxford, and also the chair of the Black Legacy Project. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you to all the panelists for being involved, and thank you to Ixara for organising everything. And Ixara, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. We are really excited to get this discussion going. Just to introduce the Black Legacy Society. So the Black Legacy Society was started last year amidst a lot of the socio-political upheaval that had happened in relation to George Floyd's death and a lot of other university-wide issues that cropped up. Our society is focused on recovering and also celebrating the presence of Black students and their history as well, and bringing them to the forefront of the narrative of Oxford University and Oxford community. So today is a discussion about the Black representation within academic spaces and how we go about discussing issues which impact Black students and their academic careers. So I'm just going to start off with a few statistics that I think would be really interesting for everybody to be thinking about during this discussion, and also I think is very pertinent for us to pay our attentions to. So there is a 13% gap between the likelihood of white students and BAME students' backgrounds getting a first or a 2-1 degree classification, and this was a part of a report by a group of universities, and this was done, I believe, in 2019. And also among 21,000 academic staff at professional level, only 140 identify as Black. And to further that, only about 35 identify as Black females or Black women. These statistics also suggest that the vast majority of British universities only employ between 0 to 2 Black professors. So these are a lot of things for us to be thinking about during the discussion, and I think, as I said before, they're very pertinent and they lend themselves particularly to forming the discussion and forming the issues that we'll be talking about. As I will also reintroduce everybody. So today we have Ayamfe. She's a third-year medic student and also has a YouTube channel detailing her experience as a Black student in medicine. Layla March, she's a third-year Arabic and French student and currently the only POC officer at Wadham College. And Andy Burton March, she's the founding president of the Christian Coal Society for Class Assist, a student society focused on reimagining classics through diverse experiences and identities. And she's also a 4th-year Class Assist. So I just wanted everybody to kind of tell the audience and tell each other a little bit about your academic career so far as a Black student, and in what ways have issues related to your race manifested in your education. Whoever wants to go first.
I think one experience that comes straight to mind is when I was in my first year of university, and I remember it was only within like 2 weeks of starting the course that one of my grammar teachers said I needed to have extra lessons because I was behind everybody else, despite only having had 2 lessons with him. And just the assumption, because I'm the only Black student in my year group to study French, and then there was just the assumption that the Black student was behind everybody else in terms of grammar when he had only seen me twice. And from gauging from what I've seen from everybody else, it wasn't that wasn't the case, in my opinion anyways. And it was the like sort of abrupt understanding that people had already categorized me as some sort of, I don't know, not as smart, or I couldn't keep up with everybody else just based on my race.
I think that speaks very highly, particularly to the racialization process that a lot of Black students or Black presenting people go through within education. And I also think that, it speaks to the biases that are present within not only the student population, or could be present within the student population, but also within the faculty. They're usually more insidious, and they're more, they're not as there, or they're not as obvious for us to kind of point out, but I think that those particular experiences are very valid, and I think that there is something there for us to kind of take apart and really understand how we understand racism to kind of perpetuate. Does anybody else want to also come?
I think, so for me, classics is a really weird subject. And it's an especially weird subject to do as a Black woman from a state school. So I've been a bit of an anomaly kind of all the way through. What was really interesting for my experience, I guess, is that for the first couple of years of my degree, the thing that had the most impact academically was class rather than race. I mean, I think classics is like 37% state schooled or something, which is obviously ridiculous when, 93% of the country are. And so I was like really behind, really struggling. I had like so much work I was doing. I mean, yeah, my story is a bit long, but, it was very, very difficult in that. And my cohort, I was surrounded by Westminster, Winchester, Harrow, Eton, like everything. And then there was me from Southeast London, which was an interesting one to get used to. But I think a lot of the like microaggressions and macroaggressions, just outright racism I experienced, tended to be student to student. And a lot of that I didn't really process or understand why I was so, like, I knew I was uncomfortable, but I couldn't quite articulate it until a bit later. So, things like from smaller things, like this one guy who, actually it's not that small, used to always do a Jamaican accent when he saw me. Yeah. Oh yeah. and sing Bob Marley, or like that song from Sebastian from The Little Mermaid. And I was like,
Who was this guy, by the way? Because I've actually had the same experience. Sorry to like cut Andy off, but I had the same experience, and it was actually from a person. It was part of like the Oxford cyclist. Like it was an initiative by Oxford to get. I can't ride a bike, guys, so I had to like take bike riding lessons at like 19. And obviously, because he saw that I was Black, and the first thing to come into his head was this ridiculous racial stereotype. Every time that he tried to like relate to me, he would sing Bob Marley, and like he would like say like I'm doing reggae dances, and yeah. I didn't know whether I wanted to report that to the university, and I didn't know which channels to go through either, because I was like, this was kind of like an affiliate to the society, to the university. It wasn't like within university directly, but I think that again it goes to show that there's a lot of things that it's hard to articulate, and as a Black student, you almost have to like think, how is this going to be received? Like, are people going to make a big deal out of it? Like, because some people don't think that it's a big deal. Some people would think like, oh, that person might try to relate to you on a cultural level, or like a cultural, people come up with many excuses.
There's some long ones. And like, I mean, there was one time, so when I first got to Balliol, there was just me and one other Black girl, and in the whole college. And I remember at the garden party we had in first year, some guy came up to me and addressed me as her and was like, oh, hello. And I was like, I'm flattered, she's gorgeous, but we do not look at all alike. Yeah. Like, there is absolutely nothing similar about us.
Yeah.
And this guy clearly knew her well enough to go up at the garden party and say hello. And then later, what was really frustrating was later when I was telling this story, and I was just stumped, at the time I couldn't say anything. I just sort of was like, and like little first year me was just kind of like,
yeah.
And I was saying it, and I was like, I wish I'd have said something like, we don't all look the same. Like I had so much to throw back. And there was a couple of people who were like, oh, wouldn't that have been a bit harsh? It was an easy mistake. I was like, an easy mistake? We don't, like, again, stop homogenizing us. But all of those things, all of these stuff has been from like students in my year.
Just to add on to that, it's the audacity on top of that is just because there aren't even that many of you to get confused. That's what adds on to it now.
Yeah.
I
have braids, like she has an afro, like we're not like
I'm light skinned, she's
even
dark skinned, she's African.
Yeah,
there's so much.
I've literally had a similar experience. Only when I was in first year, it was only 3 dark-skinned Black women, and seeing people trying to just juggling our names about, just trying to pick which one is which. Maybe if I say this name, this will be right. It's just like there isn't that many of us for you to get confused about. And if you actually took the time to get to know us, you could clearly see we do not look alike. So I agree. It's amongst the student body, that sort of issue is quite pertinent.
About my, I guess, academic experience, I remember, because I do medicine, so that's quite STEM, and I think one of the issues with STEM is they love the using BAME instead of the specifics. So in Cambridge especially, we have quite a big cohort for medicine. I think we're at like 250, like near 300. And if you look at the stats, or like when people talk about it, you'll think that it's like 30% BAME or like 40% BAME. But when you walk into our lecture theatre, I can only see one other person that looks like me. And that's in terms of girls. Like boys, they have a little bit more, but it's like, I was very shocked. I remember my first time walking into the lecture, I was looking around for a long time. And I guess when you kind of find someone, you kind of cling on. Like, that's my best friend now. So yeah, the whole BAME thing, especially with like more STEM subjects, like the BAME might look good, but then when you break it down, it's very problematic.
I think Oxford is also like a perpetrator of that. As a PhD officer, I have to do a race talk at the start of the year for freshers, and we were talking about how Oxford there was like this whole article, Oxford, it's diverse now, 20% BAME, but when you actually break down to the statistics, like just around like less than 3% of those BAME students are actually Black. So again, using the word BAME to like conflate, I don't know, like all races, and just to cover up their latent anti-Blackness is a common trend.
I mean, I remember in my in my first year coming in, and again this BAME thing, and I remember there was a big argument that came up on Oxfest where people were saying, oh, why are we still focusing on this BAME thing? They've already got enough people here. What about the North? And I was then what about the working class? I was like, firstly, intersectionality exists. Secondly, like, excuse me, have another look at those statistics and let's think again, because that is a huge umbrella, which is useful sometimes, but when you mean Black, talk Black, right? And there's a real frustrating thing, especially so when I think a year older than all of you guys. So my year intake, I think was 48 Black people, and all of those 48, there were only 4 who went to non-selective schools. Like, and I was one of 4 students who went to non-selective schools. It's like such a small group, and like once you start to break down those statistics, at first they might look all shiny, like great for the BBC, great for the Guardian, we're loving it, and then the second you actually think about them, they're diabolical. And this university has a real knack of like pretending the work is done when it just isn't.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially there's also a lot of ethnic divides as well, and ethnic disparities within racial groups, which I think a lot of universities do not take heed of. And this kind of segues into like representational politics and like statistical misrepresentation. So as Andy and a lot of you guys have all pointed out, there's often like a breakdown between Black students who come from state schools and Black students who come from private schools, Black students who are middle class, Black students who are working class, Black students who, might come from, the Midlands, or Black students that come from the South or Southeast. And I think that it continues to flatten the Black experience into a one-dimensional representation. And again, it also lends itself to a lot of these racial stereotypes that crop up all over the university. So for example, well, not for example, but like, again, coming back to representational politics, as Ivory was, saying about the lack of Black women within STEM, that's not as readily combated. It's put under the wing of BAME. If you look at BAME statistics for students within medicine, that might reflect a very good number, or very good proportion. But then if we look at the intersectionalities that manifest, so for example, how many of these students are, Black Afro-Caribbean, how many students are part of the LGBTQ community, how many students are, from working class, how many students are from this particular region. And I think there's so much more work for universities to do to really show that this isn't just a tokenistic tool to show that, this isn't just a tokenistic tool to kind of, tick off their list and say, see, like we're contributing to these ideas, or these modern ideas of equality. So just segueing into that, do you believe that it's the responsibility of Black students to create cultures and communities which emphasize and deal with these issues, or should we reframe our focus from individuals to institutions?
That's a difficult question. And you know why? Because I don't know, like I've been doing both things since I got here, because I think they're both really important in different ways and for different things. Currently, like what I would say is idealistically, it would be fantastic if those places were already here, or if we didn't need those spaces and the university already existed in a place where, you wouldn't need somewhere to go to find people like you, or to see another face that's Black that isn't your own one in the mirror. Like that would be fabulous, but they don't exist, and the university doesn't do anything to make them exist. So we have to set our own ones up. And that's why, since I've been here, I've set up two, one within Balliol and one within the classics department, because there just wasn't something that existed for people. So within Balliol, there wasn't something like, I guess there wasn't something for like mixed race students, or for students of like much smaller minorities. I found that being Caribbean, like ACS felt really, really African to me. I come from a really Caribbean area in London as well. So that didn't really feel like home. So there were so many different reasons. So we set up a like BAME group, but then everybody talks about like their individual cultures. We did a lot of, trying to break down the BAME problem as well. And then within classics, having to set something up, because classics is horrendous at least even acknowledging its past. I think it's one of the worst ones for acknowledging that. And even now, after I did that for over a year, they still defending the books written by people who are pro-slavery, and they're still, saying to my face that there's nothing racist in this work by somebody who owned slaves. I'm like, well, there probably is though. Read that again. And there's plenty of work to be done. They're still refusing to put stuff on the reading lists. So it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, I wish that it wasn't our responsibility, but at the end of the day, you also have to try and look after the other people who are here and who are coming through, and look after yourself as well. But at the same time, I've also been doing lots of institutional stuff with college to try and get them to put some institutional things in, because we're starting from rock bottom. Like some of the demands we made were like institutional bias training for all staff to be compulsory. Like that's something that should just exist as a blanket. Exactly. Imagine schools not having that, like, what I mean? So we're having to start from such rock bottom. We don't even get into the nuances yet, but yeah.
I think it's a very complex question, because I'm particularly coming from the viewpoint of, usually I find, and this has been my experience, I don't know if you guys have seen this, when these individual communities are set up, the university sometimes sees it as an opportunity, or at least other institutional communities, they see this as an opportunity to kind of co-opt into the work that has been done by a lot of Black students and BAME students. And it's like, hold on, like you weren't doing this, like you weren't advocating for this, or at least even acknowledging that it was an issue like a few years ago. But now that the work has been done, and particularly with the ACS, there's, the ACS has been brilliant in, bringing a lot of Black students in, and, having a space for Black students, and Black students then also seeing in both Oxford and Cambridge, Black students seeing both of these places as a place where they could be, where they could belong. And I do think like a majority of Black students, have come because they've seen a space made for themselves because of the ACS. And then, the university will then say, oh, like, some of our access initiatives or like diversity initiatives, that have been, done. But usually I find that sometimes they don't outrightly say which ones. They kind of just put it out there that, the university has done this much to make space for these types of students. But I think that you need to also give credit where credit is due, and also make sure that you're not co-opting into these communities that have been made to provide for individuals like this. But yeah, I think that's where I would like more focus for the institutions to take responsibility, and institutions to also, investigate their biases that is preventing them from acknowledging these issues as well. Do any of you guys have anything else like you would like to add to that question?
I agree with you. I think having been POC officer for this short amount of time, I've also realized it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you join these roles because you want to do something for your community, because you realize that your institution isn't doing anything, but then you also realize that it's a burden that they place this role onto you because they don't care and they don't actually want to do anything. It's that will have an effect institutionally, especially like being a POC officer. The amount of stuff that my college expects of me to do, as in I'm supposed to be like a welfare officer, I'm supposed to organize events, I'm supposed to be like the person who speaks out about racial issues, which is fine, and I like to do that because I care about these things, but I don't think the burden should solely be on Black students to have to speak about issues that affect us. Surely if you care so much about having a diverse student body, it should be your job, not just a Black student's job or a person of color student's job.
And I think that this really also speaks to a wider stereotype that exists about Black people within society, and it's being like the harbingers of like progress, and like the harbingers of like protest, and solely placing that responsibility on Black people, because I mean, within history we have had to make spaces for ourselves, but then I also feel like it is a double-edged sword, where it is sometimes expected of you to make that space when it isn't provided, and it's like, hold on, I'm also a student here, I shouldn't be expected to, because a lot of these things are burdens, and we've seen a lot of students that have started these types of spaces having to navigate a very, very violent environment, a very, very very violent environment where it's not welcoming towards them. So I mean, some of you might be familiar with a lot of issues that happened last year, where some students were trying to campaign for racial equality within the university, and also acknowledging Black Lives Matter and the presence of Black students. There were a few there were a few I wouldn't call it backlash, but just unneeded opinions from particularly white students, and it was almost like an attack, and it was on particularly one Black student. And I think that the psychological tolls of this are never like really actually brought to the forefront, or actually emphasized, because it does also impact your education. Like, you're here to have an education, you're here to progress your academic career, you're not here to be the next MLK. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. Like, I'm also here to have an education and have the same experience that my peers are having, and I should be afforded to do that. And again, that's why I always come back to an extent, it should be the institution, it should be the institution's responsibility. But yeah,
it's tiring enough to just like exist in these spaces, let alone to have to like, but yeah, sorry, please go.
I very much agree. I feel like some of the things that are expected should really be like full-on roles and jobs for other people, rather than laying it on students to be navigating their degree plus all this extra stuff. I remember one of my friends was like helping her college to like plan a diversity, or to like get better at diversity. But I was thinking, shouldn't this be someone else's job, to be like an actual job, rather than a student giving you advice?
also a lot of the time, a lot of those jobs do exist, they're just not being done. That's the thing. Like, you're like, what is your job? What are you being paid for? Like, the welfare people who are like genuinely trained in welfare and get paid so much in each college, they're not looking after the welfare of their Black students. The other Black students are. Like, you're not getting paid for that. All the events, all the stuff that's been set up, all the spaces, like, you're not being paid for. Like, what the thing is that, like, so there's been a huge problem again with classics faculty of like, you know what, I wish they would try and co-opt my work. They just like to pretend I don't exist. And you know, there's been a huge problem with like backlashes and with gaslighting of students. They even, like, in some emails they've like written like, one undergrad complained about this racism. Well, obviously the one undergrad is me. Like, we all know this. You may as well put my name and my address. And like, that it's like having to fight and do these things in an institution where, like, these are the people who are going to be marking your work as well. Like, these are the people who are going to be deciding on your grade at the end of the day. So it's like, how, like, judging that line of,
how
like,
do you navigate that?
How do you do that? Like, how do I say, I'm sorry, but this discipline has a real history of backing up white supremacy, which is like well established, and try and put that in my writing, try and put that in my essays to people who don't believe that exists, and to people who are going to be marking my work. That, you know, is that really difficult position to be in. And to go, you know, back to the stuff about like credit, like, after I wrote the report for Balliol and everything, and I was like, these are the problems, this is what your students are saying is a problem, everybody was like, oh, that's interesting, because surely somebody should be doing this report every year. And I was like, no, I did this as well as 2 essays that week, as well as putting on an event for my other society, you know, as well as living at home during a global pandemic. All of that happened in 1 week. And they're just sitting, not really doing anything, and then had the audacity to, in the first write-up of it, to say, and after some discussions with some students. And I was like, no, after I went around and did some surveys and wrote up a report, and then you discussed with me, this was us who did this, don't take it. So they've changed it now, it's all up there, it's all on the website and everything, and it says that I wrote it, and it says that we're the reason this stuff is happening. But like, the fact that we have to ask that. And what worries me is also, like, I'm loud, I'm vocal, I'm strong-minded, I'm going to tell you if I think there's a problem. A lot of people aren't. And you just think about how many people's like initiatives or work must have been taken because they weren't able to like stand up to this very intimidating institution.
And you know, as much as this is amazing, us recounting all our experiences, what do you think are effective solutions here to be made so that we can effectively have that balance? Where I know that, you know, it's very hard to come up with solutions because some of these problems are massive and like they go way beyond ourselves. But what do you think are starting points that, you know, faculties, universities, these academic spaces can make in making sure that they effectively collaborate and responsibly collaborate with students, but also keeping in mind that this is your job. So, you know, how do you effectively, you know, communicate with these communities of BAME and Black students, and also, you know, holding on to the fact that it is a university responsibility? How would you guys kind of, you know, put forward those? I know these are hard questions. I do think that because I'm always kind of a person where it's like I recognize the place that recounting your experiences and also ruminating your experiences has. It is very cathartic, but I also think that to get the work done, and a lot of us are doing the work, by the way, but to get the work done and also further this work, I think it's also for us, it's important for us to you know, again, reframe it within the institution and also say, how are you going to collaborate with us effectively, and what avenues are you going to establish to be able to do that? You know, it's not a question that we need to answer today because it is very hard, and every day I ask this question, but I do think it's important to put it out there, and it's important to come up with these solutions. They might not come from us, and I don't think that they necessarily need to come from us, but I think that the questions need to be out there so the university and the institutions are aware of them. And something I also wanted to kind of touch on was the lack of anti-racist training within like staff and colleges, and I think it really contributes to this culture of racism that is so prevalent within higher institutions, like institutions like Oxford and Cambridge, particularly you know, the cultural racism that is effectively within the student population as well. And I often think that because of almost like the face of the university is, you know, its buildings and its institutions.
Not to mention buildings built on the back of slaves.
On the back of slaves,
one.
yeah, thank you. They will address that first, as much as we, you know, they don't really address it quick enough. They will address that first, but the cultural racism that is very, very entrenched within some of the students, they kind of let that disperse. They don't really, they don't. Or
you're asked to explain why it's racist.
Exactly.
Or you can't complain. I mean, so the first thing, training, there isn't any anti-racist training. There's barely implicit bias, let alone anti-racist training. And again, for this report, we did a whole look. We looked through the equality policies. All it says is there is a zero tolerance policy. We're like, okay, what does this mean? There isn't really anything. And it was like non-academic staff had to do stuff, but academic staff didn't. And we were thinking, again, there's a real class thing here. We know the backgrounds of people who tend to be non-academic staff. It's easier for you to fire a scout or a cleaner or you know, somebody, rather than to think about your own racism, especially after we found out that like the majority of students experienced racism much more from academic staff. So that's one thing. First start, you know, easy to do as well, really easy to put in, is because we all have to do it when we arrive here. All of the staff who have anything to do with us should. And the other thing is complaints procedure. Like, is there one? Anywhere in, like, if you think through your faculty, your college, your whatever it is, trying to work out how you get a complaint through, who you put it to, especially when a lot of the time the people you're sending the complaints to are some of the problem.
Like, you are the complaint.
I'm like, I can't tell you you're a racist. What am I supposed to do? And that's one of the things we've been talking, like, all term, calls with the master, calls with various people in college, trying to work out, how do you do this? How do you make one that, like, it should already exist, and, you know, students shouldn't, you know, be having to deal with trying to sort it out themselves. But like, how do you make one that allows people to be anonymous, allows people to put forward things, come forward, but also shows you that you're going to be supported and that something's actually going to change? Because you know, I'm sick of seeing people I know have microaggressed this person, or I know have microaggressed that person, or macro, or just outright racist, and nothing's happened.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the university allows a racist culture to fester amongst its student body, and it just goes wildly unchecked. And when you try to bring it up to college or faculty or whatever, they act like it just doesn't exist. For example, I remember in my first year, a man that I study with literally said a racial slur in class in front of my tutor, and my tutor just laughed it off, saying, "Oh, I don't want any feelings to be hurt." Okay, and like you said, that it's so difficult to work out who you're supposed to speak to when these sort of things happen, because the university makes it so difficult. I think it's because of the collegiate system as well, to find out who exactly to speak to about these things when you do have these sort of issues. And just awful experiences.
And I mean, again, it comes back to this question of, if your priority is diversity initiatives and access initiatives, how tokenistic are they? Because now you've got the Black and brown bodies within your institution, but these environments are very hostile. They're very violent. They severely impact the psychological nature of a lot of these students. And there's nothing being done in correcting these cultures within spaces for non-white people. And I think that, again, it goes to show, as I've mentioned before, it goes to show that, are you really committed to, you know, get into the crux and get into the foundation of what causes, not only what causes diversity disparities, but also what are the, you know, what are the other issues related to them, and what are the cultural issues related to them as well. Moving on to, you know, something that's also very relevant is the attainment gap, which is a structural issue that very severely needs to be addressed. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a 13% gap between white students and non-white students, or BAME students, to achieve a first or a 2-1. And I think this needs to be addressed a lot by the institution, not only by BAME communities, because I often find that a lot of issues around race are often tethered to the individual rather than the institution and the structures that create these problems, or at least do not acknowledge these problems. And I wanted to ask you guys, did images of Black faculty, or like the lack thereof, impact your academic journey? And do you believe that it can impact Black students' performances within majority white spaces if you don't see that reflected within your curriculum, within your leadership? Yeah.
Well, most definitely. I mean, for example, I'm doing a like Caribbean, like Francophone literature module this term, and not being funny, I don't want to have to learn that with a white tutor teaching me that. Like, I would much prefer to have someone who's actually Caribbean Francophone speaking to me about these things. And throughout my time here at Oxford, I've never had well, I've had one, but only one Black tutor. And it's, yeah, I feel like it has made it difficult because from you, there's just a lack of understanding when it comes to certain things. I feel like white tutors, in my experience, it's difficult to build a rapport as well. I don't know if anyone else has experienced a similar sort of thing.
I'm really lucky that my white tutor for Black, well, I'm doing a thing on like the reception of classical literature by Black writers, Black women writers specifically. And luckily my white tutor for it is the wokest white woman I have ever met. She is incredible, absolutely fabulous. But that said, she's the only one in the faculty I trust. So in the entire faculty. And I think that, I don't think there is a single Black classics tutor that exists in the university. I think there is one like researcher, so who I've come across because of Christian Cole stuff rather than through my actual degree, who is Black, and that is it. And so yeah, I'm lucky because of the Christian Cole Society. I've been able to form connections with academics of colour and a lot of Black academics around the country and actually around the world. So they support me, and I will send stuff and be like, hey, do you know of any like Black writers I could use in this piece of work, or like any Black perspectives on something, and they will be able to like inundate me with stuff. But that's a very individual thing, and I don't like that it's just like I happen to have those connections through something I had to set up and put a lot of energy into. Those kinds of things should already be prevalent. And like the thing is that at the end of the day, a lot of the work, like for a lot of my degree, I thought that a lot of the work hadn't been done, or there hadn't really been that many Black classicists or like Black people who've been doing this kind of research. And now I'm a fourth year, I'm like, no, this stuff has been done. There is a lot of it, like relatively, that just isn't around. Like a lot of it is in America. The university doesn't have access to it. I've had to get the library to like order books in from America because it just, they don't like amplify those resources. And so like, yeah, okay, it might be really difficult for them currently to have any like Black staff, which is partly because of the environment at the university. And then there's the whole thing of like the education system problem in this country, which feeds into the, you know, who gets here, and then
pipeline issue.
Exactly. And then what happens then, like the amount of people who are going to stay on, we're like, you know, I'm not staying, I wouldn't stay, I'm ready to go now. But you know what I mean, like there are so many different things that are happening here, and the easiest thing they could do is put a couple of people on a reading list who is not a crusty white man. I'm sick of this pale male stale thing. Like, enough white men have written about the Odyssey. Okay, we get it. Like, let's maybe have another perspective now. And it has been done. That writing is there and it exists. And I can name you however many Black classicists who are doing this work, who I only know because I had to seek them out myself. Now, if you're a researcher, isn't your job to do research?
Yeah. Yeah,
I very much agree. In my degree, I've never experienced like a Black lecturer, Black tutor, or anything. And I think more than, as well as like the representation is good, it just breeds, I guess, ignorance in terms of like the student body as well. Like sometimes I go into some rooms and people are shocked. I'm like, huh? Yeah, so as well, and because of that, like some of the students are just ignorant about things that should pertain to like Black issues. Like the whole medical field is very sticky in terms of how they misuse and use Black bodies. And even when they try to address stuff like that, it's just like a throwaway module. Like we have a pass or fail thing, which is like more social issues. And if you see the lecture hall, it has like 20% of the people, because, and then that's when the most important issues are being like told.
Yeah.
And even one of the things when we're talking about health inequalities, very specifically, and we're talking about implicit bias with like medics and doctors especially, and how that causes real harm. After it came out, like some people in the group chat were saying, oh, I didn't know I was racist, blah, blah, blah. But as much as it's bad, but they don't know, there's still like an issue with ignorance and not being able to like change your actions because you don't know that those actions are bad. So
I think
surely
that
that should be compulsory. Like surely,
it is not.
especially with all the stuff recently about like in medicine and like with Black women being viewed as like stronger and hardier, so they like don't get given medicine in time. You know, all of that kind of stuff. Like surely.
Okay. But I think what Ayanfe was saying in terms of like the students kind of disparaging the relevancy of some courses that are to do with BAME students and to do with the existence of just non-white people, it's often that they turn it back on themselves. They turn it back on their own experiences, where it's like, oh, I don't know, I was racist. Oh, this is a problem to do with me. Yes, it is a problem to do with you, but this is who it affects, right? And I think that it's constantly reframing and refocusing who are the individuals who is affected by this issue and who does it impact, rather than again, it is, you know, necessary to understand the role that you play explicitly within this issue, but who is affected by it, and constantly not making it about yourself, which I think is very important, and not making it about your, you know, woe is me, oh, I didn't know I was racist. And I think that is actually even more detrimental than, you know, being ignorant itself, because again, it continues to move away the focus from the people that the work needs to be done for. And in regards to teaching, do you believe like I think we've touched on it a little bit, but do you think that the topic or the failure to take into account the presence of POC in curriculums impacts students' performance and relating to academic spaces? I'm just going to start off with this. So I think in my first year, I did Anglo-Saxon history and as you guys, well, Anglo-Saxon history is very white, just very white. I was the only Black student within like my own, like the lecture hall. There's only like 5 Black historians, so I don't think any of them were going to take Anglo-Saxon history to begin with. I mean, there were a couple of things on the reading list to like detail the you know, the presence of Black Britons and like how, you know, I think it was very relevant, well, recent research, sorry, in terms of like archaeologically discovering that like the first few people that were in Britain were Black, or at least, you know, were Black presenting. And, you know, it was kind of pushed to the back. Like I had to scroll through it to, you know, see if there was anything on Black history within Britain. And even though it was on the reading list, the way that it transferred to tutorials and essay questions and like, you know, engagement with tutors, it was not there. We talked about, you know, whenever it came to race, we did talk about, you know, ethnicity and the idea of ethnicity within Anglo-Saxon period, but it never really manifested in other forms. And I think, again, widening the scope of what it means, widening the scope of who is represented within the curriculum shouldn't only be like a modern issue, or at least pertaining to modern problems. And I think it's definitely very relevant to, you know, the classics especially. And also medicine as well. Like, you know, the history of gynecology is based on the exploitation of Black female bodies. Why isn't this explored, and why isn't it taken as seriously within the medical field? And why isn't, I'm not sure, again, I can't speak much on it, but what I got from Ayanfe was that, you know, the social aspects of medicine is kind of, again, pushed aside, is disparaged, and it's, you know, other topics outweigh it, or other topics are given more credibility than the social topics. But yeah, are there any other things that you guys would like to add to that, or like, do you have any other perspectives?
I think it just comes down to the burden thing again, doesn't it? It's that thing of, you know, the burden is placed on all of us to do that research, and the people who are going to do that research are the ones who are affected by it already and already have to exist in these spaces. And we all seek out, I mean, the fact that Layla was talking about what her research is on, my research is on, interestingly, Black people is coming up in that stuff. We want, you know, it's part of it. And we are the ones having to do that. It's not part of the stuff already. You're having to like seek out those things. And a lot of the people who would never have considered race, will never have considered all of these really important factors that, yeah, we're talking, you know, my subject is however many thousands of years old. It's still relevant. There is a lot there that is still very relevant. But those people who will have never really considered race because of like their backgrounds, where they live, where they've grown up, now at university, again, don't have to, because it's not in the stuff. It's something you have to do extra and seek out extra, and that just keeps putting the burden back on students of color and Black students in particular to have to bring it out in their work. And you, Xira, are having to do the extra research and leaf through stuff yourself to try and find something that a tutor should have put.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's such an erasure of Blackness in like the stuff that we have to study. Going back to like the Francophone Caribbean literature that I'm going to tackle this term, it only focuses on like books written in like the 1980s, and I can promise you Black Francophone authors were writing books way before the 1980s. Similarly with like my Arabic side as well, the continuous like erasure of Black Arabs in literature and the poetry that we read, just so striking. And the fact that I have to like sort of prize it out of my tutors as to like, what about like Black people in these settings and these places? Like, it's not just like free, like not openly available to us. Like, you have to work hard to access these things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of these things that we've talked about essentially boil down to this dichotomy of the individual versus the institution. And it comes down to who, like, things that, and I think that the emphasis lays differently in different issues. So for example, when it comes to the issue, who it impacts, obviously we would look more at the individual, but then when it comes to who needs to be doing the work, it's the institution. And I think recognizing this very dynamic relationship that happens between these two binaries of like the institution and the individual, I think that a lot of institutions need to take this into account and really kind of take a step back from themselves and take a step back and, really reflect on the diversity initiatives that they're doing, the access initiatives that they're doing. Are they as intersectional as possible? I think you can never be too intersectional. You can never, add in too many identities, because a lot of things do impact students and their trajectory in education. So for example, my socio-economic background has really impacted my time as a Black student in Oxford. So, this culture, Oxford has a massive culture of like boards and like, it has its own culture of, all of that. But I remember coming like to Oxford the first time and then hearing like a ticket was how much, like £150, £200. And I was just like, what? Like, you just expect me to like pay? And I'm not saying that is only pertaining to Black students, but not recognizing, like when it comes to Black students, it's racial bias, implicit, explicit racism and other things, but you don't focus also on the intersectional identities. So being Black and also being working class, like that's hard, and it's hard to also be part of the LGBTQ community and also, being Black, which I think that is something, again, I think when it comes to socio-cultural narratives, sometimes it can be a bit hard to navigate, it can be hard to navigate around those, especially for the university. But I do think that they need to take into account how they're going to navigate around them. I think that we can open up the Q&A now. If anybody has any questions, we would love to hear other people's views and perspectives, also possible solutions that we could have to a lot of these issues as well. I think we had I don't know if we had like a previous question. So I think Andrea said, okay, I'll just do Andrea's one first. So Andrea said the oppressed and marginalized is then responsible to do the work to dismantle hierarchies and the standards that we or they do not benefit from. Very true. And all the while still living with the effects or affects of the harm from these structures and standards themselves, which again, we've discussed very in detail. And I think that I often like kind of think back to a lot of these scholars, like you've researched these things in depth, like you've researched racial critical theory, like you've done this work like before. Why are you not applying it? And I often think that a lot of especially like, you know, if you want to say liberal leaning academics, they do the work, like it's very theorized, but when it comes to the practicalities and ensuing a lot of these theories that you learn about, or a lot of these things that you want to talk about, it's not enacted within the actual, you know, population or within the actual institution itself. I think it's Venetia. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right. She's an Oxford Black graduate. And she said that she wondered if you had anything to say about the pressure that Black students might feel to focus on Blackness in whatever discipline happens to be. So for example, she says she completely understands that you prefer to learn from a Black tutor, and she was lucky enough to have a Black professor. But she's also concerned about Black academics not being taken seriously if they, for example, want to study a very niche topic in Anglo-Saxon history. And I think that's also very, very valid. Yeah, that's a very valid, you know, perspective. And, you know, that again, it's this binary of you want to learn about Black academics, but then it's like you're, you know, there's never anybody there to kind of, you know, to possess or like give you the resources for that. But then if you also want to not do like Black studies or like anything to do with Blackness, and you're seen in a different light. And I think that I've also talked to like a few Black historians that say sometimes I don't want to do anything with Black history because, you know, certain things are associated with it. Some people feel like they're more comfortable detaching themselves with the particular, and particularly a lot of Black history does revolve around oppression. It's very highly stylized around violence and like the diminishing of Black people. So I can understand if a Black person doesn't want to do that, or like, you know, play the Blackness card and like, you know, so if they are wanting to kind of navigate into a different section, and I think a lot of issues that are to do with Blackness can also crop up in other identities and in other histories as well. But yeah, what do you guys think to that question? I
mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you know, there is an expectation placed on us as well, and that's been brought out brilliantly by the question, an expectation that the thing that we should be interested in is Blackness. And like, yeah, I am, but I also absolutely love Greek art and sculpture. Which, like, you know, that's my favorite part of my degree, and I should be able to study that as much as I want to. And there's a real expectation of, okay, fine, we'll let you into this university, fine, we've got you here, now you can do the work on the Black things. And you get a weird look when you say that you're interested in something else, or that what you do isn't what people are expecting you to. And like talking to lots of Black academics who are really struggling with this, where, you know, they just want to study some Greek tragedy, they just want to do that, they don't care, they just want to do that, and because they have to exist as being Black in the rest of their lives, they want something that isn't directly about that stuff. And there's a real pressure, there's a real expectation that comes not just, I think, from the institutions and academia itself, but also from other Black people, and is another thing that, like, you know, I've been doing a lot of looking and a lot of research into the history of Black classic scholarship, and there is a huge period of people calling you a sellout if you do stuff that is, you know, a typically white thing, rather than another reclaiming or another way to access something that you should have had access to in the first place, that you've been excluded from. And it's this real muddy waters, and at the end of the day, like, I feel like we should be able to do both. Like, you should be able to, and a university, like, is meant to be a place for education. It should be somewhere that enables you to be able to do that and explore the stuff that you find fascinating. Like, that's the kind of thing that Oxford likes to say it prides itself on. Well, I want to see evidence of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think this strikes like a wider issue, because it just reminds me of this article I read last year about Daniel Kaluuya talking about how he doesn't just want to be an actor who does movies that are solely about race, and how easily Black people are typecasted into this sort of person who has to, everything about us revolves around our Blackness, and like we are politicized beings. And again, like Andy said, I am very much interested in my degree as it relates to Blackness, but I am also happy for, and I want Black academics to do something that actually, well, excites them. That's something that doesn't have necessarily to do with their race. I don't think that we solely exist on this earth to talk about our race and the effects that it has on us all the time. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that like kind of play into that specific question that I've personally experienced. So I think in like my first year, I was really, I mean, I'm a historian, like literally, you all know that I'm a Black historian because all of my modules, anywhere that I can pick Black history, I will. So literally throughout the first chance that I got to like pick something that was Black or like, you know, Black race focused, I picked that. But I'm also very interested in Polynesian islanders and also like Hawaiian history. And that's something that isn't necessarily not possible, but like necessarily not a avenue that a lot of Black historians might go down, or like historians who are racialized as Black might go down. But I also find this other dynamic where it's like I'm really interested in African studies, but then also the reception of African studies outside of the institution is almost seen as like a very white thing to do, like by I don't know, like by Black communities. They're like, why are you doing African studies? It's almost like you know, you don't really need to do African studies, like you are African, like why? Like it's almost like they don't like African studies itself hasn't been given the same amount of credit, you know, generally within the field as European studies, or like, you know, other studies that exist outside of Blackness. So it's almost like there isn't a lot of validity within Black history, and there isn't as much validity within African history as there is in other types of history or other types of narratives or other types of fields of research. And I think one of the reasons why I'm so readily invested in it is because, you know, I'm not saying that I'm the one that's going to attach that validity to it, but like I see validity in it. And I think that we need to continue, like there are Black people that want to do it, to continue to push this narrative that, you know, African history is just as valid as any other types of histories. So from Henna to, from Henna, she says that she sees kind of two threads running through, you know, the discussion. One is racism is so present, and also there are very few Black students in the first place. She wants to ask what people's experience of doing access work was. What are the challenges of doing access for an institution that is so racist? Ivory, do you mind going first? Because I think you are part of the ACS. I don't know how much like you got from like, you know, how access worked within Cambridge ACS, you know, in terms of like relationship.
Access is a very big part of the ACS. And I'm in two minds about that, because I feel like sometimes you just need the space to just be and like make friends and meet people that look like you without having the responsibility, because it very much becomes a responsibility of you guys need to do a bigger access conference. You need to get more people, and you put that responsibility on yourself to kind of like draw people in as well. But I feel that since our presence is politicized anyway, sometimes people just need a face. Like just the fact that we're here is someone else knowing that they have the opportunity to do it. But I feel access is a lot of work, and sometimes you feel like it is a personal responsibility to help others as well, especially when it comes to reading over personal statements, interviews, and all of that stuff. Yeah.
I've done lots of access since I've been here. So I've done Target Oxford, Unique, like open day stuff. I was access rep for my college last year. I was doing an access event for the uni yesterday. Like I've done loads. And it's one of those things that's very difficult, because on the one hand, you have this real sense of, you know, there do need to be more people here. This place will not change until it's forced to change. But you also feel like you're preparing. There's a brilliant article that a friend of mine wrote called "Preparing Lambs for the Slaughter," and it really feels like that sometimes when things are very difficult at the university, and you're telling people to come here, and you're like, how do I square that ethically in my head? But usually I fall on the side of it is worth it, because like, again, as Iamfe said, like you need faces. And like I've had students come up to me and be like, even the fact that I saw you from across the room, you were a Black woman here, that was enough. And then I got to meet you, and then I got to be, you got to be my mentor, and then this happened, and that meant even more. And like that kind of thing, that kind of representation among the students is really important. And it's that really difficult thing of like, I've been in like so many of the university's Access videos, and like, I know that one of the Access reps at somewhere asked for a load of pictures, and 80 pictures got sent, and I was in every single one. And like, there's that existing as like, I know I'm a token that the university is using, and I know that the Access like teams, and I absolutely love the Access teams, I've been working with them for years, you know, I know that I'm very useful to have, I tick many a box, but at the same time, like, it's such a valuable bit of work that I know does need to be done. And you know, it's all well and good me here already getting my degree telling people don't come here. I'm going to come out with an Oxford degree, and that's going to open doors, and that's something to also bear in mind. And yeah, I don't know, I just often end up on the side that it outweighs, but that's why I've done as much institutional stuff as I can, because then I can make myself feel less bad about sending people here. At least there's some kind of proof, I guess, that it is trying to get better. But also people are going to keep coming, right? Like, all of the private schools, all of the white boys, they're all still going to apply, they're all still going to come, and you know, if we don't help out all the others, what happens to them?
Yeah.
Well, as for me, as much as I do think Access in general is a positive net thing, I've chosen not to partake in the Access initiative schemes, just because I'm not gonna stand in front of Black students and lie to them and say that Oxford is the most welcoming place, that it's ready to have all of these Black students, and that the university has made so many significant changes for like the well-being of Black students. As much as we have come far or whatever, or made progress, there are still so many things that I think it would be, I don't know, for my, like, me moralistically, I just couldn't, I don't know, advocate for this university knowing that I don't think that it has done anything really for Black students.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like, I try and go into it and try and be as honest as I can, because I don't think I could sleep at night if I told them that this place is perfect, because it's not, and it isn't going to be anytime soon. And you know, it's one of those really, really complex areas, and I so respect everybody who's been able to not partake in the Access stuff, because I know that when I first came, I had so much pressure, like, you need to give back, you need to get the people from your community back in, you know, there was so much pressure there, which doesn't need to exist. Do you know what I mean?
But then that whole idea of like having to give back, like, you should be grateful now, and now it's your turn to like do the work,
it's bad in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just inherently wrong. Like, a Black student should not have to be grateful that they got a place here. You worked as hard just as your white counterparts.
If not harder.
Again, exactly, harder. So I'm not going to be doing up thank you master for anybody in my college, begging, like, advocating for, like, as much as I want Black students here, again, is it really my role to bring Black students in? Then I think that's questionable.
Yeah. I think that, like, I was, like, in my first year, I was a bit too honest in a lot of Access initiatives, and I think that's when it was like, that's when I kind of realized maybe I don't need to be doing as much Access stuff, because like sometimes I don't fit into like the script that they want me to kind of deliver. And I remember like talking to like a group of parents and their kids, and it was very racially mixed and very racially diverse, and they asked me about like the race experience, and it was particularly like black parents, and I went in I was like, yeah guys, like, it is not perfect here, like last week, like one professor, like, you know, particularly did this, and you know, there's also these social issues as well. And it was like the Access person was like, what are you doing? Like, I'm trying to sell them. And I was like, but you can't tell me to, you know, be honest and like give my experience of Oxford and then also tell me that my experience of Oxford is wrong. Like, it doesn't, you know, or at least it needs to be censored. And I think, again, that is something that the university needs to realize, that if you're doing access, especially for Black students, be ready for Black students to also bring their negative and positive experience to the forefront. Yeah, Andrea said that she agrees, and you should have the benefits that comes with an Oxford degree and the experience of equity and safe spaces created for identity group / person. And I think that's an excellent place to kind of end. Thank you everybody who attended. This was a great discussion, and I think it has really, it's really contributed to a lot of things that the university needs to think about. Not only the university, but us as individuals, like how we navigate ourselves within these spaces. And also, I think it also acts as a form of solidarity, being able to discuss about these things and knowing that you're not the only person that goes through these things either, especially, like, you know, being a person that is in a revisionist, or like, at least I consider like a revisionist kind of society, searching for, you know, to bring Black voices and Black faces back into the Oxford narrative. I know that I'm not the only person that has done this work, and, you know, I know that there's other people that have done it before me. Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. The Black Legacy Society will be having hopefully other events during the term and next term as well. We will be like putting a mailing list on our Facebook page, so if you do want to know more about the Black Legacy Society, do go to our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page, and the mailing list will also be on the Facebook page if you want to be the first to know about our events. And I also want to say a big thank you to Ivory, Andy and Layla. You guys were amazing. I've been so honored to have you guys here. Like, you're just amazing, and I think that, you know, you've really contributed massively to this discussion, and I think this discussion will, you know, have hopefully an impact on somebody. If it's not the institution, it can be somebody that just comes across this, you know, this talk in particular on our page. So yeah, yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this and for putting it on.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think everybody's gonna exit now. If you guys could like just stay after everybody's kind of left, that would be great, just to kind of like wrap up on things. Everybody? Yeah, I think it's just us now. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I was just in the background chucking everybody out. So I'll stop my share now.
Hi Sarah, are you able just to turn my video on so I can say goodbye?
Yep.
Are you able to stop the recording? Sarah, are you able to stop the recording as well?